Have you ever wondered what happens when a child stops breathing? Not in their sleep, not in a hospital, but in broad daylight while riding a bike, hair flying in the wind, laughter still echoing in the air. What happens when life is interrupted like a song cut off before the chorus? And if that very child could tell you what happened after their heart stopped beating, would you be willing to listen? My name is Sophie Elaine Harper. I'm the youngest of 8 children, which means I was always the one people made room for, but also the one easiest to overlook. Not because I wasn't loved, but because there were so many voices around me. I learned to be quiet. I learned to wait for my turn. I learned to observe and understand others while rarely being truly seen myself. But I didn't resent them. I loved my family. I loved my mom, my brothers, and my sisters. I loved the way our house was always loud, always busy, but warm in its own kind of way. I just wished that one day, someone would listen to me the way I always listened to them. And I remember that day. It was a crisp fall afternoon. Leaves blanketed the sidewalks in golden layers. I had just left school, my backpack light, my heart full of daydreams. I was riding my bike home like I always did. But that day, I turned left instead of right. I took a shortcut through a quiet neighborhood because I wanted to pass by the little bridge where I'd once seen a mother deer. I didn't know that a small decision would change everything. I didn't know that just seconds later, a car would come around a corner, no light, no warning. And I didn't know I wouldn't have time to stop. In some moments, you can't quite recall the sequence of events, but you remember exactly how it felt. I remember the cold pavement pressing against my back. I remember the smell of car exhaust mingling with the scent of fallen leaves. And I remember how the world suddenly went silent. No birds, no voices. It was like all the air had been sucked out of existence. Then I felt myself rising, weightless, no pain, no fear. Just unfamiliar. I looked down and saw a small child lying motionless in the street. Curly hair is tangled. A backpack was tossed nearby. And I realized that was me. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just wondered, why can I see myself? And then a strange sensation swept over me. Not panic, but absolute stillness. I could hear thoughts not my own, but my mother's. The driver is shaking behind the wheel. Every thought moved around me like sound waves. And for the first time, I realized that thoughts have shape. Those thoughts have power. But that was only the beginning. Because just after the moment I saw myself from above, I felt something approaching. A light, a presence, a love I had never known, but that somehow felt deeply familiar. And if you think this experience was just a dream, wait for what comes next. Because that was the moment I began to understand. Thoughts are not just what we think. They are what we become. I drifted, not falling, not flying, just drifting through a space with no name. No clear colors, yet everything glowed. No sound, yet everything echoed. And strangely, I wasn't afraid. All the fears that once made me cry in the dark, the ones that forced me to act strong around my loud older siblings, vanished like morning mist. I was no longer the youngest child, overshadowed and quiet. No longer the girl who always came last in a family of 8. I was simply myself, and I existed fully. Then something happened. A voice. Not from outside, but rising from within, like the knock of truth, my soul had always known but never dared to open the door for. It didn't call my name. It didn't command. It simply whispered gently, yet with a power that made me tremble. You think you're small, but your thoughts have never been small. In that moment, the space around me changed. Before me appeared a river of light, but it didn't flow in a direction. It pulsed like heartbeats, like waves. And in each wave I saw thoughts. Not in words, but in feelings, in color. Some waves were soft, warm like silk. Others sharp as ice. And I realized each ripple was a thought I had once had. About my brother. About my mother. About myself. I saw a tiny thought from a rainy afternoon. I had stood behind a bedroom door, listening to my siblings argue about the family's plans. No one asked for my opinion. No one looked for me. And I had silently thought, maybe I don't matter. That wave showed up as a dim gray shimmer, flickering, then bursting like a soap bubble. But I watched it touch my own heart, leaving a hush behind like the silence when a guitar string suddenly snaps. Then I saw another evening, when my mother held me close and whispered, I know you always give way to others. I see it all, sweetheart. I didn't say anything back that night, but I had thought, if she sees me, that's enough. That wave lit up like a soft orange sunset, quiet but deep. I stood there, stunned. I had never known that thoughts could carry light. The being of light had no shape, no eyes, no mouth, yet it felt like the sum of everyone who had ever loved me was drawing near all at once. It didn't need to speak, but I understood. It showed me, every thought, whether heard or unnoticed, carries a frequency, and that frequency can either harm or heal. I saw it clearly. Every time I blamed myself, every time I thought I wasn't good enough, each thought left a scratch on my soul. But every moment I forgave someone without needing to say it out loud, every time I chose to understand instead of judge, those became threads of light that slowly mended me from within. I wanted to ask, then why don't we know this sooner? But the being responded in silence, through presence alone. Because love isn't taught in words. It's remembered. And I began to remember. Tiny moments I once thought were meaningless. Now I see them as the sacred spaces where my soul had quietly grown. But it didn't end there. Because something else was returning to me. Someone I had once known deeply. Someone my soul had buried long ago. And just as I was about to see who it was, everything around me shifted again. Someone was waiting. Not ahead of me, but deep inside. I don't know how, but I could feel myself stepping into a deeper space, not with my feet, not with my body, but with intention. The moment I thought, I want to understand more, everything around me shifted. The light softened, giving way to a space woven entirely from memory. There was no ceiling, no floor. Only breezes carrying familiar scents, the scent of my mother's clothes when she held me, the aroma of holiday dinners, the musty pages of old library books where I used to hide when I was sad. Where was I? Was this heaven? A dream? Or some kind of soul chamber prepared just for me, long before I was ever born? Then I saw him. He didn't walk in. He didn't arrive in brilliance like in the movies. He simply was. As though he had always been there, just waiting for me to become quiet enough to finally see. A figure glowing from within, not a light that overwhelms the eyes, but one that awakens memory. Though I had never seen him before, I recognized him completely. As if I'd known him as long as I'd known myself. There's no name grand enough for this presence, but if you forced me to choose a word, I would say, love. He didn't scold. He didn't ask questions. He just looked at me, and in that gaze alone, I broke down into tears. Not because I was sad, but because, for the very first time, I felt truly seen. Not as the youngest child, not as the quiet girl always waiting her turn, but as a whole soul acknowledged, known, loved. I moved toward him, trembling not out of fear, but as a reflex of the soul. And he embraced me. Not like a human hug, with arms and pressure, but with light, with covering. A kind of embrace that required no hands, no words, yet silenced every wound inside me. I no longer felt cold. I no longer felt alone among my 7 siblings. I no longer wondered why I was so often overlooked. Because in that moment, I understood. I had never truly been forgotten. I had simply never fully shown up to be seen. He showed me something not through moving images, but through feeling, through immersion. I saw every moment I sat quietly beneath the table while my siblings argued. I saw my mother trying to divide her time among 8 children, often sighing by the time it came to me. I saw her eyes, not distant and indifferent as I once believed, but tired to the point of tears. And then I saw something that made my soul ache. One time, I had hidden in the storage room to cry. I thought no one knew, but my mother had stood outside the door for 15 minutes, her hand resting on the doorknob, then pulling away. She couldn't come in, because she was afraid she would cry in front of me. I had no idea. I used to think I wasn't loved as much as my siblings. But the truth is, love has many ways of revealing itself quietly. And not every kind of love gets the time or space to be spoken aloud. I embraced him again, or maybe it was more accurate to say, I let him hold me one more time. And I had only one question. Do I still have somewhere else to go? He didn't answer right away. But I understood. I hadn't seen everything yet. There was still something I needed to learn, a lesson my soul had been waiting for this entire lifetime to understand. I don't know how it happened, but the moment the thought of an unfinished lesson crossed my mind, the space around me began to shift. It was as if the being of light, the one I dared not name, yet trusted with the whole of my soul, had quietly opened another door, deeper and more defined. And just like that, I stepped into my own life. It wasn't like watching a movie or recalling vague memories. It was a vivid reliving, where I was the observer, the feeler, and the one experiencing it all again. Every moment, whether small or seemingly insignificant, played out in a timeless space. And the strange part was, I didn't just see myself, I could feel what others were feeling in those very same moments. I saw a winter morning, when I was 6 years old. I had just been teased by my brothers and was secretly hiding my torn shoes under the bed because I was embarrassed to wear them to school. I remembered the shame so clearly. But this time, I also felt the ache in my mother's chest as she quietly slipped money for new shoes into the pocket of my coat and whispered reminders without daring to meet my eyes. I used to think she didn't care, but the light now showed me she cared so deeply, she didn't know how to show it without breaking down. Then I saw another afternoon. I was sitting curled up in the backyard while my siblings talked about college, about getting out of our house, about breaking free. I had stayed quiet, just listening. I saw the thought that crossed my mind then. Maybe I'm the leftover of this family. And my heart broke as I watched that thought ripple like a silent tremor, dulling the inner light I was born with. But the sacred light didn't leave me in sorrow. He brought me to moments that were small, yet radiant. I saw myself drawing a picture for my mom on Mother's Day with a scribbled message, "I love you the most." I had handed it to her quietly, unsure if it was good enough. But this time, I saw the way her eyes lit up like a candle. I heard her thoughts as clearly as if they were my own. My quiet little one sees things no one else ever does. I saw another moment, one I had nearly forgotten, when I gave up my only slice of cake for my older brother, without saying a word. I saw the glances I had shared with each member of my family. I rarely spoke up, but I was always watching, always feeling. And in that moment, I understood. My soul hadn't come into this world to compete for love. I had come to quietly make sure it never faded. A voice rose within me, not from any one place, but as the echo of everything I had just witnessed. Love doesn't have to be loud, but love is never invisible. I realized then that I had not lived my life wrong. Even in the moments I felt left out, even in the times I withdrew in silence, the love I gave was never wasted. I was the youngest child, but that didn't make me the least valuable. I was the last because I was the thread that held together what was beginning to unravel. Then the being of light returned. And with a presence as pure as spring water, he spoke not in words, but in energy I could feel in every part of me. "You have now seen yourself. Now see what comes next." I didn't yet understand what he meant, but I felt something coming. Something beyond the edges of memory, beyond even this life. Something that stirred every lifetime I had ever lived, like strings of an ancient instrument waiting to be played. And that's when I saw the gate open. Not the gate that leads back, but one that leads deeper into truth. And if you think this journey was only about remembering who I've been, then what came next will show you who I was before I ever carried the name Sophie. I didn't walk. I wasn't pushed. I wasn't pulled. But I knew, with an unshakable clarity, that I was being guided, drawn gently into a different realm of existence. The images of my family, of my mother, of my childhood, all of it dissolved like morning mist, making way for something older, deeper, more reverent. It felt as though I had entered the library of my soul. Before me stretched a vast, boundless space with no walls, no ceiling, no floor, only pillars of golden light rising like threads waiting to be traced. Each pillar was a memory, but not from this life. These were memories from lifetimes long before Sophie. I saw them, and they saw me. No one had to explain what I was witnessing. I simply knew. Every being I had ever embodied was here, not to judge me, but to give back what I had once left behind, meaning. I was led to one of the pillars, and as I reached out not with my hand, but with my presence, was instantly drawn into the first memory. I was an old woman, living in a quiet Balkan village. I could feel my wrinkled skin, the shallow rise and fall of my breath, the aching in my legs from a lifetime of carrying water. I had no children. I lived alone. But every morning, I would stand on a small hill, close my eyes, and press my hands together to pray for a child I would never meet. At the time, I didn't understand why. But now I did. That old woman was me in a past life, and the child she prayed for was me now. As I stepped away from that pillar of light, I felt as if I had embraced a long-lost part of my spirit. I realized I had once loved from afar, sacrificed in silence, and carried a blessing I never got to deliver. Now that blessing had finally found its way home. I approached the second pillar of light. This lifetime was brief. I was a war refugee, an orphan child in a crowded camp. I lived only until the age of 7. But in those 7 years, I held the hands of the dying, stroked the hair of the frightened, and smiled through hunger and tear-filled eyes. My life was short, but my light rippled outward like waves. I couldn't speak, but others felt peace when they were near me. And when I passed, a young doctor stationed at the camp left his position in military medicine to become a full-time caregiver for children, because, as he said, One tiny gaze changed me forever. I left that memory with a trembling heart. Who I once was mattered less than what I carried from those lifetimes. And what I carried was not status, not wealth. It was the energy of love, patience, and compassion. The being of light remained beside me. It didn't speak, but I could feel its smile, warm and approving. Then it gestured not with a hand, but with a quiet guiding presence toward one final pillar of light. This one shone brighter than all the others. I knew instantly, this was my current life. The life named Sophie, the youngest child, is often overlooked, but quietly holds the invisible threads of everything that came before. I didn't have to step into it. I was already in it. But now, I was seeing it through the lens of understanding. I once blamed myself for being unseen. But now I realized I am the embodiment of forgotten souls, of old prayers, of countless longings for one last chance to live with love. I am not just a little girl. I am a promise fulfilled. A spark that has traveled through centuries of shadow. A heartbeat echoing from a call made long before I was born. I understood. Truly. Deeply. But just as that sense of completeness settled into me, the light whispered one more thing. You still have a choice to make. And that's when I realized the journey wasn't over. Because I had to choose whether to return. To go back to the world I had left, the one filled with pain, noise, confusion, and people too distracted to really see each other and live again as a light in the midst of it all. And that answer was not simple. Just as I was still reeling from the memories of lives I had once lived, the being of light paused, as if listening to something that didn't come from me. Everything around us softened. The luminous memory pillars faded. The space went still. But it wasn't empty. It was the kind of stillness where even the universe holds its breath. And then I saw her. She approached like mist, gentle as morning light. So translucent she seemed woven from silence itself. But before my mind could find words, my heart already knew. I whispered, "Sister," because I knew. Even though I had never seen her face. Even though in this life she was only a forgotten name in a family tree, a baby girl born too early, who passed just days after birth, when my mother was only 22. Her grief was buried in silence, too heavy to carry aloud. I was the youngest. I never met her, but my soul had never stopped sensing her presence. She didn't speak, but I heard her voice not with my ears, but through a rising tide of emotion that washed over me like waves. Her voice was soft, like wind threading through trees. I've always been there. Every time you cried in secret. Every time you were misunderstood. Every time you felt like a leftover. You weren't. You are the one keeping my promise alive. I broke down in tears. Tears for a longing I'd never named. Tears for realizing I had never truly been alone. My sister, though she lived only a few days in the physical world, had poured her entire soul into staying close to me ever since. She told me not with words, but through a current of knowing that she had chosen not to reincarnate. That she had asked to remain close, to guide me through this life. That each time I nearly gave up, it was her unseen hand lifting me. That sisterhood didn't need shared birthdays or schoolyards or hand-me-down clothes. True sisterhood is a thread of the soul, and no death can sever it. I asked in silence, "Why me? I'm not special." And she simply smiled. A smile so gentle it lit up the entire space, not from any external light, but from the moment I finally allowed myself to believe I was worthy. Not because I had achieved anything, but because I had always been loved. Before she left, she placed her hand over my chest, or rather, she touched my soul and whispered something I will carry with me forever. You are the voice for the souls that were once overlooked. Live as if you are the outstretched arms for those who no longer have the chance to be seen. Because I believe, if anyone dares to love silently, it's you. And then she faded into the light. Not gone, but woven into me. A part of me that had never truly been apart. I stood there, not feeling empty but whole. Whole in a way that words could never fully capture. I knew then that if I chose to return, I would never again be the forgotten youngest. I would be the sister she never got the chance to grow up with. The keeper of the flame for the souls who never got to shine. And the journey wasn't over. Because the light was guiding me to another door. Not a door to the past. Not even the present. But to a future I could choose. I stood before a field of radiant white light. It wasn't blinding, nor was it frightening. It had no shape, no edges, no form, but I knew. If I stepped into it, I wouldn't come back. Not because I'd be kept there, but because I simply wouldn't want to return. That light held a quiet pull, a warmth so familiar it felt like home. The kind of home we belonged to before we ever had a body, before we had names, before our hearts beat for the first time in our mother's womb. Just thinking about that place made every wound from life dissolve like mist at dawn. The being of light looked at me, not with eyes, but with a presence so full of love it made me feel whole. Then it asked me, not with words, but with a wave of deep knowing, "Do you want to go back?" Such a simple question, and yet it made my entire soul tremble. Going back meant returning to a body already worn thin, to a diagnosis no doctor could fully explain or heal, to a family still full of unspoken distance, to a world where light is often forgotten beneath the noise. But here I was loved without condition. Here I was fully seen. I didn't have to try to be understood, accepted, or held onto. I just was, and that was enough. I didn't answer right away. I looked back on everything, the lifetimes before this one, my sister's gaze before she faded, my mother's quiet embrace, the silent efforts of my brothers who never quite knew how to say what they felt. I saw the invisible thread that connected me to this life, not through obligation, but through love, still waiting to be completed. And then I remembered a moment from childhood, when I was burning with fever. I had drifted in and out of sleep, and I vaguely heard my mother whisper beside the bed, "I don't know how to love you the way you need, but I'm trying to learn." I didn't understand it then, but now I know she meant every word. Not everyone knows how to love, but real love always tries to learn. I fell into a stillness where I was given absolute freedom. No one pushed, no one pulled, no one made me feel like I had to. The decision was mine entirely. And in that moment, what came back to me wasn't some grand cosmic truth, it was something small. So small it broke my heart open. I remembered the afternoon before I was admitted to the hospital. My 3-year-old niece, who barely even knew how to say my name, suddenly hugged my leg and said, "Auntie, don't go away too long, okay?" I had laughed at the time, but now, that little sentence rose in my soul like a cry from the most innocent part of the universe. A reminder, don't miss the chance to be light for someone who needs you. I took a deep breath, not with my lungs, but with my whole being, trembling with life. And I said, not with words, but with a pulse from the very core of my soul, "I will go back." In that instant, the light receded. Not with sorrow, not with resistance, just quietly, like a wise teacher bowing as a student returns to the world. I felt that light place something within me, not strength, not certainty, but remembrance. A sacred remembering that I am light, that I have seen what lies beyond death, and that I have a reason to live. As my soul began to return to my body, I saw myself lying motionless in the operating room. Nurses are moving quickly. The surgical lights above were shining down like echoes of the light I had just left. I could feel my body struggling, pain crashing over me like waves. But I wasn't afraid. I was no longer someone who ran from pain. I was someone who had chosen to return, to transform it. I opened my eyes. My chest rose with that first breath, heavy, raw, burning, but undeniable proof. I was still here. I was alive. But I wasn't the same. I was the youngest daughter who had returned from the light. I was the unfinished dream of a sister, now continued. I was the one sent to gather the unspoken words, the embraces left undone. And I knew then I still had a mission. I returned to a body that was depleted, but with a soul more whole than it had ever been. The pain, the exhaustion, the nurses, the breathing machines, the glaring lights, none of it felt threatening anymore. They were no longer obstacles. They were instruments of return. I wasn't fighting to survive. I was choosing to live. And that choice changed everything. In the early days after surgery, I couldn't speak much. But I looked with different eyes. I looked at my mother, the woman I once thought would never truly understand me. And in her eyes, I saw an ocean of silent regret. No one said a word, but there was a moment when she held my hand tightly and whispered, as if pleading with her soul, "I'm so sorry, please forgive me." I only smiled, because I knew there was nothing to forgive. My mother wasn't perfect, but she had tried with all she knew. And from this moment on, I would love her with the heart I had brought back from the light. My brothers, loud, busy, always caught in the rush of life, began to quiet down around me. Maybe they sensed something had changed. One of them, the one I had always thought was the most distant, came to my bedside and gently placed an old music player in my hand. "I kept this for you," he whispered. "It still works." I couldn't hold back the tears, not because of the player itself, but because, for the first time, I felt remembered. I began to write down my journey, not to be praised, but to preserve, because I knew that someday, someone out there would need this story, just as I had once needed to be understood. I shared what I had seen, not to convince, not to argue. I simply told it as a whisper to the heart, that death is not the end, that love is not confined to flesh, and that even our quietest thoughts ripple into the invisible. What surprised me the most was that everything began to change not around me, but within me. I became quieter, not because I was growing older, but because I was remembering. I remembered that every person I met carried a flicker of light within them. I began to truly listen, to see more deeply, to touch more gently. And the miracle was that the world started responding to me in the same way. One afternoon, while I was sitting in the park, a little girl I'd never met came and sat beside me. She looked up and said, "You smell like light flowers." I laughed, but then went quiet. Because I knew, sometimes children see things adults have long forgotten. I began to heal. Not just because of medicine, but because I permitted myself to be healed. I forgave the past. I forgave others. I forgave myself. And every wound, every question, every space inside me slowly began to close in silence. There was a moment when I sat in front of the mirror for a long time. Not to fix my hair or apply makeup, but to look into my own eyes, long and deep. And for the first time, I didn't see a fragile or forgotten girl. I saw an ancient soul, one that had journeyed through lifetimes, through light and shadow, and still had enough love to return. I am Sophie Harper, the youngest of 8. But I no longer see myself as the youngest. I am the echo of voices that never had the chance to speak. I am the continuation of an ancient promise. And I carry a mission to remind the world that beyond all thought, love, and presence are the things that truly never die. But the story doesn't end there. One day, I saw a little girl crying alone on a bench. She didn't know who I was. But when I sat beside her quietly saying nothing, she turned her tear-filled eyes toward me and asked, "Can you tell me what happens after people die?" I held her hand, gently smiled, and said, "Sweetheart, I don't know what happens after death. I've been there. And you know what? The real question isn't what comes after we die. It's what makes us truly alive. My journey is only beginning. And maybe, just maybe, my story is the flicker of light you've been waiting to see in the quiet darkness of your own."